Hey, I am on the call with Jared Reston. Jared, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Tom?
Good, man. Hey, so, a lot of the listeners of the podcast are uh, law enforcement, military, first responders, martial artists, self defense proponents, and so on and so forth. And so I think they're going to find your story fascinating. And, I always get a little bit nervous before I talk to uh, guys like you, warriors like you, who've been through the fucking shit. And so just because, I mean, you know what I do and you know how we met and all that. So, I have the honor and privilege to, consulting and training people that go out. But I always refer to myself as I'm Angelo Dundee. I'm on the other side of the rope, and I might have just dated myself there because nobody remembers what boxing is anymore. But I'm like the coach on the other side going, I think you should do this and try this and do that. And you are the guys, in the arena doing the shit. So it's an honor to talk to you and learn from you. For people who don't know, and this is like 10 years ago, right? It's like
Yep.
the event.
Go in January.
Yeah. So, 10-year anniversary, if you want to call it an anniversary. I mean, it is an anniversary. That event could have turned out very differently. It didn't, specifically because of your mindset, which is a big thing about, everything I'm about is I go, it doesn't matter, whether or how you punch or kick or shoot. It matters whether you do punch or kick or shoot at the moment that you need it. And so tell everybody, because there might be some people here who, for whatever reason, don't know about what happened. I know you talked about this a zillion times, but give us the Reader's Digest version of that event.
So back in 2008, I was working an off-duty gig. I'm a policeman. And so off-duty is like full police powers, but you're kind of hired. We're hired by a mall to handle law enforcement problems at the mall during the weekends and things like that. So during that, we were notified of two shoplifters. We went out. One of the shoplifters fought. One of them ran. We chased the one who ran. When I ended up catching him, well, first I attempted to tase him. That malfunctioned. Then I had to go hands-on with him. Once we went hands-on, shortly into that fight, he produced a 45 caliber Glock 21 from somewhere. He shot me, was able to shoot me. The first one hit me dead center of my jaw, and it exited out my neck and then hit my shoulder and my body armor, and then continued to shoot me. So I took 3 to my body armor, 1 through my left thigh, 1 in my right buttock, and then a graze of my right elbow. So 7 total shots with a 45, and I was able to return fire and kill him.
Fucking insane and amazing. And so what I'm going to do is, and I've listened to a bunch of interviews. In fact, we play one of your interviews in all of our law enforcement courses, and we talk about the notion of staying in the fight, but we get specifically into there's a section in our course where we talk about the relationship between physiology, fear, psychology, mindset, and when we go through some of the kind of mechanics and steps that help people produce their own internal mission of why they're going to survive, we then play your video. So and have been playing it for years, long before I met you. So it was a real honor to meet you in person finally a few years ago. One of the things that we always talk about is, when I interview people and I get them to really peel the onion, is this, I call it the victims of violence, facts, that every victim of violence who lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling before the attack, different than other things. Do you recall, it's been so many years and you've gone through so much, both talking about it, teaching about it, healing it, all that stuff. You've arrested and fought tons of bad guys, right? Was there anything different about this guy, as you put your hands on him?
It wasn't. That was the thing. I didn't say I didn't see it, but I never noticed him grabbing his waistband or anything, like the signs that I've seen before and I've seen after of people that are armed when they're running, like supporting the gun. And it just,
right.
none of that showed. I mean, it was just a shoplifter, and it was so fast moving. I guess it never. He never talked to me. He never did anything. So I didn't. It was just a criminal shoplifter running.
Yeah. No. And that's cool. I mean, there are, I get asked a lot. So what is the counter to an ambush? Like, do you have one? I'm going, no, that's why they call it an ambush,
Right.
And so there weren't, in this case here, none of those pre-contact cues, guys running with one hand on his belt, on the other hand, you could go, oh, he's holding something, hands go down fast, trying to distract you. So no, this is really what we call the proverbial Jack in the Box, where it's just that clown head pops up and you're fucking in the fight.
Right.
I know if my wife would be in here hijacking this call, asking you so many questions. And I should bring her in here because she's so entertaining. And I'm always sitting there like stunned at the things that she asks people, because people are afraid to ask. I don't know if you know Brian Murphy. We had him on. He was Brian said that the first shot, like you hit him in the jaw, and he said it felt like a punch.
Yeah.
Yeah. What can you recall? I mean, things are happening so fast and so explosive. What did that feel like, that first hit?
Well, I didn't know I was shot. I thought I was punched because we were locked up fighting.
Right.
And I thought he just caught me. I've boxed. I've done things. I've been hit when, like one of those where'd that come from blindsides. And that's
right.
exactly how it felt. And I just, until as I was like falling to my left, I was like, man, get up, Jared. He caught you with a good one. So he had me dazed, like one of those, almost like a standing knockout, like an 8 count. You know what I mean? Like I was,
right.
Hey man, get ready to fight. But like I wasn't or my body wasn't doing what I wanted it to do.
Right.
And, but I could feel with my tongue that my teeth are now collapsed on each other and they're laying flat in my mouth. So like I knew something was up, that it wasn't a punch.
And things are happening so fast and in slow motion at the same time, no doubt, where you're trying to catch up to the event and reconcile, your brain is trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Were there any moments there when you're communicating to yourself, get up, get back in the fight, get your gun, or whatever you're thinking there? Were there distracting thoughts of fear or doubt, or were you like totally in the zone?
It was get it out and let's get it on. Like, that was like, and I remember shooting them and just watching that sight and I just like almost like self-coaching myself. Like, you're doing good. Give it to him, give it to him, give it to him. Like one of those.
Nice. Had you been other gunfights prior?
Yes. One.
Okay.
And then I've been 2 since then.
How many since then?
2 since then.
2. No. Okay. Wow. So the, instinct and training inspires courageous behavior. And what I want is somebody listen to this, of course, there's that holy shit where you kind of put yourself, in your shoes, which no one can, but it's, what the listeners I'm hoping take from it is how resilient we are emotionally, psychologically, physically, and that you can and must stay in the fight. And so, I like to tell people instinct and training inspires courageous behavior. Was there some sort of like crucible event, some sort of training prior to that where, and it could have been 10 years earlier, it could have been something your dad said or some mentor, like you're a big guy, you train, you've always been physical. Was this just you, or was there something you go, man, if I hadn't had that training, this could have been different?
No, I think it's just me, and it's just like the way I was raised or whatever. I mean, it's just kind of me.
Right.
I always enjoyed physical stuff. I never shied away from a fight. You know what I mean? I'm the youngest of 3 boys, so I got beat up my whole damn life growing up by my brothers. And
right. Right.
Contact sports, and I'm a believer in what they say. Like, you know what I mean? Like when I went to and during combatives, and when someone told me like this, I believe it. Like, hey, you can fight through this stuff. I believe it.
Right.
Like, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I'm getting shot doesn't hurt, man. It didn't hurt at all. It hurt 10 minutes later.
Right.
I had stuff going on. Like, I could tell you that was my first shot. I couldn't tell you any other shot on my body. I didn't
Right.
feel like my leg hit and be like, oh shit, my leg. It's just this shit. Your body protects you. It's amazing. And I haven't had any, like special forces, SEER training. I was a college student. I played college football, and then I became a policeman at 21. So it's like, to me, I tell people I'm nothing special. I just believed in what I did. And if you believe it and you train it and you do it, your body's going to do what, you're going to do what you're trained to do, and just believe it. And don't let any of this negative psyche, like, oh, that's going to hurt, or this is going to happen. If I'm shot, I'm dead. Don't let any of that. I mean, anger can push you through a lot of good things.
Yeah. No, this is that last little, 2 minutes that you just said there was the gold in this conversation, because there is a lot of, overly mechanical training out there that can easily fail and put you in a negative fear loop because they've made training so complicated. And then you've got people that pass on erroneous beliefs. I mean, I'm sure you've had, you have a training company now, and I'm sure you've had people in there where you could see that somebody told them never do this because this will happen. And, and you remember back in the days, I remember, years ago when force on force marking cartridge got big, for years it was like if you got shot, you're dead, you were done, right? If a simunition round hit you, that took decades before people, when I was doing that, I'd get shot in the arm. I go, like, why would I stop if I was shot in the arm? And I'd ask, the instructor, and go, those are the rules, right?
Yeah.
But like that's training people to maybe stop fighting if they're being stress inoculated poorly. So very cool. How long was recovery for you? How long till you were back on the road?
6 months.
Okay.
Got back in 6 months, and then I'd be back for a few months. Then I'd have to go get another jaw surgery or something. So then I'd be out for, another 2 months. So altogether, I was out almost a year, but it was spaced out over 3 years.
Right. What was it like getting back on the road after the event and after the healing?
I may have been a little too aggressive at like, not aggressive towards people, but like I probably pushed a little too hard maybe to get back to work a little too soon. But that's always who I've been. I'm always going to push hard and do things and go fast. So I'm just kind of like, it was an easy transition almost for me. Like, my wife knew that I was never like retiring or quitting was never an option. It was always, all right, well, we're going back to work. It's just, so that was probably the hardest part, was dealing with my family.
Right.
But again, they knew what time it was from the start. So it wasn't that, like, the first day was a big deal, but now it's, she tells me to go have fun playing guns with your friends. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no, it's tricky. And that's one of the things that I get asked a lot about with people is this, this doubt and fear, hesitation type thing, because you can fixate on, the past, you can fixate on the future, or you could be right in that Zen moment, the now. And, so there would be a lot of people that would wonder, shit, going back to work, where's your head? I always tell people, when you're training and when you're operating, when you're out there, are you thinking about your last fight, or are you thinking about your next fight? And that distinction is very subtle, and it has to do with self-awareness, right? And, so you could go out there and notice that maybe you're moving a little bit slower than the rest of the guys because you're like, shit, I don't really want to go in that door first, or go touch that guy because last time I touched that guy. Or now I know you, and also just based on listening to you, you're a leader, and you had to move forward because that was part of the cathartic experience. I'm not gonna sit back here. I'm getting up. It's like getting back on the horse. Mindset. Were you mentioned aggressive, and where my head went was, hey, the next time I grab somebody, even if he was like, it was like a 90-year-old guy who was jaywalking, I grabbed him really fucking hard, right? And just because it was like that that body's protective mechanism. Be very deliberate on my next contact.
I've always been like that. If I put my hands on you, I put my hands on you.
Right.
But it kind of not relaxed me, but I'm confident in myself now. Like, does that, like, with more training, because I continued my training, continued my combatives. So, like, I don't get too aggressive with people because I know if it's time to go, I'll go. You know what I mean? I'm going to win. So I don't, with more aggressive I would push people out of the way so I'd be number one in the door.
Right.
Because I want people to know that Jared's there. I'm not changed. I'm not going to slack away. That's what I mean by aggressive.
Yeah. No. I get that. And I'm glad we talked about it because, the word can mean so many things. And if we had just left it at, I was more aggressive, you were what I understand very clearly is you were aggressive in where the doctor might have said, take another week. You just said, no, I'm ready to go. I was aggressive at getting back in there. And you're, at the end of the day, the greatest fear that any person would have is to, in terms of violence, is to, be subdued in the fight and lose that fight. Where, here's a guy that clearly tried to kill you multiple times and couldn't. And then you got rid of this fucker. And I'll say that on behalf of you, like he's not in jail, eating food from taxpayer money, and he's just a piece of shit, and you put him away, and that's got to feel good, right? And there's a ton of research for years about people who are attacked and the difference between like their psychological recovery and mindset if they fought, whether they won or lost. If they fought, did they stay in the fight? So you not only stayed in the fight, you also did what you had to do to terminate.
Like, even with the aggressive, because you always have doubts. So like I would always make sure that the fellows knew that I was good to go, and I always had doubts. And then my shooting after that, like I talked to, he's an administrator of ours, and we were just talking. He was a friend. He's been on the team and I was just talking. I said, I needed that gunfight.
Right.
And he's like, you don't ever need gun. I was like, my job, people want me to do my job. They need me to do my job, or that hesitating could cost somebody their life.
Exactly.
Well, I needed that to make sure that I could still do the job. I knew in my head I could do it, but you always have doubts. Like, am I going to freeze? Is something going to come over me? And it didn't. So I was like, all right, that's it. It's almost like, everybody has that dream of pulling the trigger and it doesn't work. And you're pulling it forever. Like every policeman has that dream and nothing's working. So with that, it's like, I answered the bell on my first shooting. So my third shooting was almost like me re-answering the bell, making sure that I can still do my job because people count on me to do that job. People depend on me to be there. So like I needed that third shooting to kind of help me get back into the groove, I guess.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. It's a big thing. I mean, the stuff that we, you just remind me of a story years ago when I was talking at the ITOA, and after that's for people who don't know, the acronym Illinois Tactical Officers Association, and SWAT cop waits till I'm cleaning up my equipment, and he comes up to me and he's hesitant and he's waiting, and he says, "Hey, 5 years ago, I was in a shooting, and something happened, and something you said about a stimulus being introduced too quickly. Do you remember what it was?" I said, "Yeah, if a stimulus is introduced too quickly, your body flinches. Your body's survival mechanism does amazing things, and it will try to cover your head and push away danger, depending on the proximity of the threat, the nature of the surprise, blah, 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 blah." He goes, "So, we made entry. We thought the guy was asleep. We saw him in the back room. Somehow he picked up on us coming around. Door wasn't locked. I opened the door, slowly opened the door, looked back at the team like, holy shit, we don't have to breach. And as I opened the door, he was standing in the hallway with a shotgun raised, and he was like firing. Everything went in slow motion. He said, I jumped out of the way, and the rounds hit number 2 in the chest, and number 3 shot the guy and killed him. And he said, I've been having nightmares for years, and like that I'm a coward, that I shouldn't have moved. And I said, well, you'd have taken that right in the face had you not moved. And that was your survival system. That wasn't, I said, first of all, get this out of your head that you're a coward. You can't make it on a SWAT team if you're a coward. You wouldn't make it through the training. So, and it was interesting that you could see just me saying that to him as this, imagined authority figure on mindset changed his posture right there, Jared. And in some of your interviews you talked about, and I want to bring this back to like what you're talking about there is like mental posture in that next fight, because in the back of your head you go, yeah, I know I'm a badass and I'll fight to the death. I've already proved that. And I've been that way, whether it was in football or wrestling or whatever, is like, you drag me off the mats, blah, blah, blah. But in the back of your head, you go, gunfight's a little bit different. There's a technology there. And so a lot of times when there's a shooting, people are afraid to, especially in this PC age, afraid to high five or good shoot or really support the individual because they're afraid of the politics associated with it. And this guy, in all these years as department, like no one had ever said, you're alive because of this and you're not a coward, and get that out of your fucking head. And it was just like that, and it snapped. And I know for you, there was like that almost cathartic thing in that next fight that I can make this happen. You just made me think about that story. And again, I'm trying to share things here, knowing how many cops and other first responders listen to this stuff, that if they don't get a chance to train with you or train with me, that they can really start thinking about this shit. Because you want to kind of internalize this stuff before the fight, ideally. Just know you're going to. In one of the interviews I heard you talk about staying in the fight because this guy was not going to stop you, that you were going to get back and see your family, that you were going to fight for you, for them, for the community. During the fight, did that come up, or is that just part of your general mindset? Like, was there a moment when you were like, oh shit, and then you flashed and saw your wife's face?
Never saw my wife, never saw my sons. That's all pre to me. Like, I thought about that stuff when I go to the range, and
right,
to be great, like to try to become great and do that is for them. It's not, it's for me also, but it's part of, I don't know. I always feel like you can always lie to yourself, but if you put someone else ahead, you try not to let them down, and you'll push yourself harder not to let someone else down early. So just make a commitment to something else other than you, because you can lie to yourself.
Right. Right. I like that. And it's it resonates with our be your own bodyguard principle, where the paradigm we invoke is in a Socratic discussion and some drills, we notice without judgment that you can hesitate and that you can have fear and you can have doubt. But if I put your kid or your wife or your husband or a loved one in the scenario, people immediately get really pissed. So I'll like be doing something with somebody and I'll go, okay, you hesitated there. What's up? And you're like, I don't know. Well, what if I grabbed your wife by the hair like this? And I did. And they're like, hey, don't fucking talk about my wife. And they're suddenly they just, and that's what we're trying to invoke in them, that there are things that you will do. You will put yourself in harm's way more deliberately, more suddenly, more aggressively to protect somebody you love than sometimes yourself. Depending on the stimulus, and that's I'm glad you brought that up because that's a huge one for anyone listening to that stuff. Like Jared said, it's easy to fool yourself or lie to yourself, and going for that run and going to the gym and having that perspective that you're the protective service team for your family, and if something happens to you, something happens to them. So just you stay training. You teach a lot now. obviously you're full-time law enforcement. How often do you run courses? Where do you run courses?
We run them all over the country. We try to get out once a month. Because I'm still full-time and stuff. I try not to put a burden on them.
Right. Right.
Try to lose my full-time job, but
Right.
we're somewhere once a month typically going out. Our home base is in Northeast Florida, and we teach here 3 or 4 times a year. So,
right. How, you obviously run a few different courses. How much do you build into the classes? I mean, everyone who comes to your course, no doubt, like knows who you are, and so there may be, that expectation or assumption that there's going to be some, recreation or discussion of that. And you obviously do like a bunch of different courses. How often does kind of the gist of what we're talking about today, is that built into your class where you go like, hey guys, like here's like a warrior mindset block for an hour or whatever?
well, I don't build it into my courses because I feel like, a lot of my courses are 2-day courses and things like that. And I'd rather get on the hard skills of things because I only got 2 days. But during breaks, we talk. I mean, shit, Tony, I talk about this because this is who I am. It's how I like.
Right.
You hang out with me for, we'll talk about it, and you bring things up. We talk about anything. It's just the way I live my life. So yeah, we talk about everything, and we talk about warriors and just different things. We talk about cowards and that are in the warrior profession. Like we talk about a lot of these things, and
Right.
and just talk about, hey, sometimes you think you're going to doubt and this, but just do the right thing and keep pushing forward, and it's going to be okay. Like that's kind of what I never thought of myself as like a huge tough guy. I just was not scared to fight. I've lost fights, but I wasn't scared to get into them even after I lost them. You know what I mean?
Right.
One of those things.
What would you, having been through what you've been through and seeing, some of the stuff in the news the last few years, without saying stuff where I might have to edit this audio, right? Can you, and again, it doesn't have to be political, and you can say, yeah, let's not even go there. But, I get asked a lot, and I got asked on another podcast, where the host had a kind of a negative police kind of bias to his question. And, I paused and reflected and answered it as honestly as I could. But if you were to like make some global, generalization about the state of either training or mindset, or, someone to put you in charge of like, hey, this is what we need to do for police. You have any thoughts on that? I'm being really vague here, just deliberately.
Yeah. I mean, we had this conversation last night. I think there's a demasculation of men, starting even when I was like in school. I'm not that old. I'm turning 40 in a couple of weeks. But, fighting in schools, like even if you're picked on or you're hit or whatever, and you hit somebody, you're suspended, you're in trouble, you're like fighting is, and I'm not saying there should be all out fights, but there needs to be a common sense thing, because there's policemen out there that have never been in fights.
Right.
And fights are bad. And they're, you know what I mean? They're the whole, and to me, fights shouldn't be your first thing, but fights sometimes are necessary. Like, I mean, sometimes it's the only thing that you can do. So I think we need to get back into more, I'm not saying that de-escalation doesn't need to happen, but we concentrate more on these de-escalations and talking, and just with cops today, like with phones and texting and all that, no one really talks to people anymore.
Right.
And they're not confident. So you get punched in the face, you think you're going to freaking die. You know what I mean? Because you've never been in a fight. And I think that sometimes police go to guns a little sooner than they should nowadays, which then puts a bad, look on police as a whole.
Right.
It's not police as a whole. I think if we kept combatives in and kept it more fluid and trained combatives more often and things like that, people get more comfortable fighting and doing things like that, which will bring the guns out. Or more range time. The more I'm confident in what I do and I can do something. Yeah, he has a knife or whatever, but I'm pretty confident I can beat him. Then I'm not going to probably just shoot that guy right off the bat. Like, we're going to talk, or, you know, we can work certain things out. And I find that you look at guys that are on SWAT teams and things like that, and, you know, we're the trained killers and things like that. But if you look at the percentages and with scenarios where you could have shot them, SWAT people typically don't shoot them. I believe it's because they're confident in their skills.
Right.
And they're just letting things play out because they're not as flustered or they're not as scared. And it's not that we're different people. To me, it's the amount of training we get, the amount of stress inoculations, the amount of scenarios we see and see things play out. We need to get back to training police to be police. And that's my thing.
I agree, bro. The, you know, if you look at it from a behavioral point of view too, you know, body language is 60% of communication. Your tone is 30, your words are 10. And so I wrote an article on training for, I think it was for Caliber Press. But you know, where, you know, some of the riots that happened during the last administration, and you see like, you know, cops, you know, covering and turning and not being able to, you know, assert themselves. And you can just look at somebody's body language in their face and know whether they're shitting their pants or whether they're restraining themselves, whether they've been in a fight and they're just like threat discriminating and waiting. Should I do something? Should I not? But there's no trepidation. You know, they understand. And that's the difference between training and not training. But the behavioral point of view that I want people to think about is, and you know, they've interviewed bad guys in jail who go, look, I know who to mug, I know who to rape, I know who I can get away with. And they feel that same thing too, that, you know, if your lack of confidence and lack of aura and presence is inspiring the bad guy, then he's going to do something if he wants to, right? And so you either look like, and again, I'm dating myself, but you know, if for younger generation, you know, you either look like Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry, or you look like Barney Fife, right? And I'm using two cartoony, you know, representations there that you could say stop, don't move, but if it's stop, don't move, and you're backing up, the bad guy isn't going to stop and he is going to move. You know, and so, you know, what Jared's talking is something I support and fully agree with, that we need, I call it the 3 R's, you know, realistic, relevant, and rigorous training. You know, it's got to be realistic. You know, I talk about the difference between possible and probable. I think people practice too many things. They confuse technical with tactical, that, you know, bad guys attack in a very similar fashion, regardless of what country you're in. A sucker punch is a sucker punch, a headbutt's a headbutt. They're primal gross motor, sudden assaults inside the reactionary gap. If we're talking combatives hands on, that if you train in too many technical things, you can get lost in that chess match. It should just be, you know, blunt trauma, disengage, threat, discriminate. Keep it super fucking simple. Right. And you know, it's anyways, I'll go off on a rant here, but I see you're you know, this is going to be an audio for the listeners, but you know, you're smiling, you get this, you know, this is pretty, if you've been in fights and you've been successful, it's pretty straightforward what works. And, you know, everything's possible, not everything's probable. And really people need to think about that difference between technical and tactical. Is this a realistic skill? And I'll leave this little rant on those 3 R's again. Make it realistic. Training should hurt, but should never injure. Find that balance. Make it relevant. Like, look at what's happening today. If you're practicing like some like ancient or outdated, you know, modality, and people don't move that way anymore, or don't fight that way, or there's no evidence of it. We like to use the term evidence-based training. And then make it rigorous. It should, every training session should affect in a positive way your aerobic capacity, your stamina, endurance related to fighting skills. Right. So, what's your personal? Are you still boxing? What are you doing for fitness?
Boxing, I guess, would be the most fitness side of it for fighting, just because you know, I think ground fighting was kind of my demise. So when I got from playing football, and then when I got out doing my mixed martial arts training and stuff, and like I was comfortable on the ground. So when I was trying to get that guy to the ground, I should have been punching, creating a little bit of distance, but I wanted to get him. So I think that was a demise in my training. Like I shouldn't be training to go to the ground. Training to
let me interject here and let's talk about that at the risk of having, the entire jiu-jitsu and MMA community, attack me, and I'll stand behind you if they do. So no, he said it first. But listen, like first off, like I love jiu-jitsu. It's chested muscles at 100 miles an hour and sometimes slower, but it's a chess match.
Right.
It's really different if somebody has a knife or a gun. It's not where you want to be. It's very honest of you to bring that up, and it was something that I thought about when I heard you describing the fight on the Police One interview, where you had grabbed the guy, pulled him down, and you were trying to knee him in the proneal and dropping elbows, and where you haven't at that point there. If you train too much in one range of fighting, you predispose yourself. It's like Pavlov's dog. You predispose yourself to go there, and you hadn't cleared, like visually and physically cleared this guy for weapons. You just grabbed him, right? And you couldn't know. But had you used some like for example, when he stopped and turned, had you hit him with 2 tie kicks to the leg and dropped him to the ground, let's say, and then he had reached for the gun. It had been a gunfight where you saw him reaching for it. And right. So really cool of you and very honest to say that might have been not the demise, because you ended up, of course, winning the ultimate fight, but a zig when you should have zagged, right? Like, yeah. But and I want those of you listening to this isn't a diss on grappling. There's a time and a place for it. And not all problems can be solved with grappling. Not all problems can be solved with a firearm. And you've got to have this functional toolbox, and force must parallel danger, and things can happen so quickly. But, we talk about when we're teaching the spear tactic is that we create space by moving the bad guy. And we always move the bad guy into this theoretical field of fire, where then we can do a quick, like emotional, psychological, physical sight picture and go, oh, fuck, here we go. But did you do any scenario or replication training where you tried to recreate the event?
No, because there's really no. Yeah, I guess we recreate it all the time, from going hands on with somebody and then he pulls a pistol out. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I can't, I don't even know where he pulled it from.
Right. Right.
I think it's because I was too close to him.
Right.
If I just hit him a couple of times, boom, boom, boom. And like you're saying, just push him away. Now I can watch him go for a gun, or I can see the gun coming into play. And being close may have been a good thing, because he couldn't get a good shot on, the angles were jacked up.
Right.
But for me, I want to see it. And that was kind of my thing. It wasn't like it was something I talked about. I liked jiu-jitsu, and I liked ground fighting, and I liked doing that. So that's just what I did.
Right.
Because I didn't think I was the best stand-up.
Right.
So now I'm improving my stand-up and just staying that and just creating the distance. To me, jiu-jitsu and all that works great when they're not armed and they're just fighting.
Yeah. And let me
jack somebody up, but I've seen some things this works. I do this. And I was like, that's great. You have control over that one arm, but if he had a gun, or a knife or whatever, you're not.
Problem. Yeah. Yeah. And let me just leave, add another thought to this. Like the hardest person to take to the ground is somebody who's not afraid to the ground. And I'll say that again, the hardest person to take to the ground is the person who's not afraid of the ground. And so if you're afraid of the ground fight, you absolutely need to study jiu-jitsu and wrestling and grappling so that you eliminate that fear. But, to me, the grappling should be accidental/incidental. And what I mean by that is you slipped on a banana peel. You guys, it was wet. You both went down, or like he broke your rhythm and he took you down, and now you better understand some positions. We do, for those of you out there thinking about different exercises and drills, is we'll take like red gun, blue guns, training props, and while people are grappling, we'll throw the weapon down near one of them, and like nobody knows who's the good guy or the bad guy. Suddenly your fascination with that particular tendon and ligament and how you're going to submit the person gets short circuited by the fact that somebody's reaching for a gun or a knife. And you need to make those transitions really quick. So if you do find yourself, or just your training has a grappling bias, and I tell people, be careful of the unconscious bias, because the unconscious bias will predispose you to do something you may not want to do. And we tell people, careful of your practice, you might get really good at the wrong thing. And so if you are grappling, well, I do recommend you add some training props in there, and don't turn it into some kung fu magic shit. Keep it primal, keep it gross motor, keep it again, it's the 3 R's, and do your best to step back and go, is this realistic? Is it relevant? Is it rigorous? And then we're hitting all stuff. And be Socratic with your training partners. Like, hey guys, it's almost like what you described there was Socratic, where someone goes, hey Jared, check this out. And you're looking at it going, yeah, that's a cool move. But if it was multiple assailants, both your blocking and striking tools are tied up. If the guy can get to your gun or your knife, or his gun or his knife, he's got a free arm. I'm not sure I want to do that, right? And those are the things we need to look at, because we don't look at them when we're kind of incestuously training in a family that goes, oh, I love this. And this goes for, it's funny because there was a video that I dissected online where an Israeli soldier gets stabbed in the throat. There's 3 of them that are approaching this, this terrorist. They don't know he's a terrorist until he stabs him, but a suspect. And it's in some CCTV video that you see this on. And the 3 of them approach the guy, and their hands are down. They got their long guns, and they're all in full kit. And they say to the guy, hey, hey, let me see your papers. And he stands up, and he starts to pull some papers out, but underneath the paper, he's using the paper to shield him palming a knife. He pulls the knife out, stabs the first guy in the throat, and then slashes at the other 2 guys. Everyone's startle flinching. Imagine that physiology, right? They're starting to flinch, running away. And then 3 or 4 other Israeli soldiers come running into scene, and the guy dies of lead poisoning, right? And they just shoot him. And so what I did is I posted online, how come this Israeli soldier didn't use his Krav Maga? Because that would be the system taught in Israel. Well, everyone, like the Krav Maga community, went berserk on me, right? Oh my God. And I tried to explain to people, like had this been in Brazil, I'd have said, how come he didn't use his jiu-jitsu? And had it been in Thailand, I'd have said, how come he didn't use his Thai boxing? If people, and I deliberately was provocatively using that clickbait headline because I wanted fucking people to listen. It's not, your style isn't going to save you in a fight. You are. Your mindset, your attitude. If I said to you, hey, what style of grappling were you using when you grabbed the guy, pulled him beside you, and contact shot him? Like, there's nothing. You just fucking grabbed him and pulled him, right? If I said to you, like, hey, was it a Weaver or Saucilles? Like, after you've been shot in the face and shot in the elbow and shot in the leg, what stance were you using? You're going, like, no, dude. It was like my little hole was pointing at that guy's body, and I was, again, coaching myself, fucking shoot. And so talk to me there, because you got me all fired up here. I'm like, I'm ready to go hit a bag or something right after we get off this call. But it, like, that mindset there that I kind of like just alluded to with the scene in the Israeli, when shit starts to happen there, is there anything that we can leave our listeners to, and like, how do you, and you said it before, but I just kind of want to like hear it again from you. I talk about having your cognitive brain and your reptilian brain kind of communicate harmoniously, because if one of them takes over, you might be hesitating or freezing.
Right. For me, it's training. Repetition through training will give you that automated response, like, and just different things. Like for me, I call it like having speed dial or violence on speed dial. You know what I mean? It needs to be there every time I'm talking to somebody. You know, I'm like a pit bull. I'm wagging my tail and doing whatever, but you do the wrong and I will bite you. You know what I mean? And that's how it needs to be. I think sometimes when people are de-escalating situations, they're de-escalating themselves. Mm-hmm. Rather than, like, the words coming out of my mouth are saying this, but in my mind, I'm like, you do something, it's going violent. Like, if this is how it is. So it's their decision how it goes. If they don't meet, I mean, we already have a set, you know, like the matrix of what we can do, our use of force policies.
Right.
If you meet it, you're getting it. So don't meet it. You know what I mean? That's kind of, and I think when people try to de-escalate, they de-escalate themselves, and then it turns bad, and then they got to ramp back up. And you know what I mean? Or they don't have time to ramp up. So like, even like that consensual counter, like with an Israeli, he's like, all right, well, I'm going to go do this. But were they ready for him to stab him? Does that make, you know what I mean? Like,
no, and apparently not. You know, and that's really the point, is that you can't. You know, one of the things that we teach everybody in our course is that you can't match the adrenaline dump of a sudden attack.
Right.
Of the bad guy. And so before you step inside that reactionary gap, there needs to be this assumption this might be a deadly force encounter. And if this guy's, you know, in his mind waiting till you get closer to, like this guy did, pull a knife and stab somebody in the throat, there's no way that you can do that you have time for, you know, verbal or parry, deflect, block. I mean, just if people really study violence, you know, between stimulus response is gap time, and that gap time is eaten up while your cognitive brain is going, what the fuck? It's trying to catch up. How you change that, if action's faster than reaction, the ambusher, the bad guy is always action. So we know, you know, when in training, if you say, hey, when he does this, do this, you're violating physics and math right there. Right. You need some sort of different perspective and mindset approaching that. But I love what you said there, violence on speed dial, and I love the observation that if you're de-escalating the bad guy, do you have enough self-awareness to recognize that you are possibly de-escalating yourself and putting yourself more in danger if he's bullshitting you, if he's just waiting for a moment to get close? You need to have the appearance of de-escalation and the preparedness to just move. And it's not even escalate. Like I tell people, like just,
we can't escalate the situation, but you have to respond appropriately. There's already rules and laws and you know, your operational orders and all that say what you can do when they do this.
Right. Yeah.
Don't go over them or under them. Do what they say.
Exactly. Force must parallel danger. And I just, as a visual, I'll tell guys, hey, it's easier to de-escalate than it is to escalate when shit's happening fast. So if you go in there, so you know, like, you know, when you kick down a door and you're doing an entry, like, you're not kicking down the door going, this is going to start at verbal. You're ready for a deadly force encounter, and then de-escalates based on the behavior of the threat. And that's the way it should be. You know, you can't, guys, those of you listening who are just wondering if your training is appropriate, you know, think about this, really introspect on this, because it's life-saving advice you're getting from Jared. And it's you can't in the fight take a timeout and go do some jumping jacks and fucking warm up and then go, oh, wait a minute, like, can we do the ambush tomorrow? Let me go like research a little bit more of these gun disarms or whatever. Right. So, you know, get your shit together. Like, you know, the big thing that Jared said a few times is called is training. I will just add there, because I've got a conscious bias, not an unconscious bias. My conscious bias is your training must be realistic, relevant, and rigorous. And you'll know that, again, Socratically, look around and look at your training and balance it around this evidence-based theory, where if you're grappling or you're doing some stand-up, and if you can mirror or match and show kind of like, hey, here's a video of us training, and here's a video of this vehicle stop or this fight or this CCTV, and you're seeing parallels in movement and energy expenditure, then you're doing good training. If one of them doesn't look anything like your training, then you may be getting really good at the wrong thing.
And you're right. And like, there's a lot of things people are like, any martial arts better than no martial arts, which is true. But there's also time of like spending your time and your money of doing the right thing.
Right.
I don't want to go to horrible training, but I also like to look at other people's philosophies, and it might change how I think. I mean, I've changed shooting styles. I've changed CQB tactics. I mean, I've changed over my 15-year career, and I've morphed into, I think this works better. I wasn't shown this before, so I'm not going to stay, well, this is how I've always done it. It's going to be a continued education and evolve into what I believe is the best tactics out there.
100%. You got to, you got to keep looking, and sometimes looking at something really bad makes you safer too.
Yeah.
Right. You look at it and go, I'm never going to do that. Right. Listen, I have more haters than lovers, and I wish I could monetize my haters, because I tell people, I go, listen, like, I have a singular conscious bias, and that is to enhance the survivability of the people I train. And so I know that, we could say, hey, wouldn't it be good to have these 20 knives, these 20, handguns, these 20 rifles, like these different types of body armor. And suddenly what you're doing is you've got too much technology. You can't even carry them. You can't even load them. You're confusing which rounds go where. And I'm giving a stupid example, but I know if the shit hits the fan right now, I know which handgun I'm going to grab,
Right.
And it's the one I never have to clean. It's the one that doesn't malfunction. It's the something, right? And so, then this is just a metaphor. I'm not saying don't collect and don't practice and don't learn about other stuff. What I'm just saying is that don't confuse martial arts with combat sports. Don't confuse combat sports with reality-based martial arts, and don't confuse all three of those with a violent encounter that's started by a bad guy. Bad guys are you said something earlier. And I'm trying to recall it, because when we were talking about some, what we could do to make cops safer, and we talked about like, that they are, we're emasculating them, they've never been punched in the face. We got to bring back combatives. You got to remember this, that you decide you want to be a cop and you're 21, and then you go to academy and you go through some training. The bad guy you're going to meet on the street at 22 years old, and he's 22 years old, he's been an asocial motherfucker for probably 15 or 16 years. And he's already raped and stabbed and punched and attempted murder. So it'd be like you deciding you want to go into the octagon, and you go to this, like, it's your first fight on a Saturday night, and the guy that you're meeting has been fighting for fucking 15 years. Right. But it's his first fight in an octagon. And that's what I try to tell people is, like, you need to try to somehow accelerate through intelligent stress inoculation training, because you can never have the same asocial behavior and mindset as a bad guy, because we're the good guys.
And that's what people always ask me, like, what do you think was going through his head? What do you think I was like, I don't know. I don't care. Like, right. I just know that I gotta win. Like, I don't get into the whys or whatever. I get into he did and he got this. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't care. Like, with all these people talking about, well, I'd pull my gun and I'd show it. That doesn't scare people. Like, that wouldn't scare me. Like, I don't, like, you know what I mean? Like, you want to pull a gun on me? Cool, whatever. But the criminals that I deal with on a daily basis, they've carried guns. They've seen guns. They've been shot. Their friends have been shot. This is their life. You can't fathom how they are. Like, so, I get with this, like with our 10-year-old football team that I help coach. There's teams out there that these kids are and they're out there playing their ass off, and they are hurting our kids. Like, not illegally, not just, but they are pure mean.
Right.
And people ask, well, how do I get my kid to play like that or do like that? And I was like, I don't want my kid to play like that. That 10-year-old has been the man of his house, cooking his daughter or his sister's meals and doing this and doing that. you don't want that lifestyle for your child. You know what I mean?
Right.
Those kids, they are hardened individuals at a young, and violence is what they know, and violence is what gets them praise. You know, the
Yep.
more vicious you, and it's not their fault or whatever it is. It's just that's the environment they're in, and you don't want to live like in that environment. You don't want your kids to be like that, but you have to recognize that environment if you are going to combat that environment and be ready to go at a moment's notice. Like,
And that's a tricky one, because we have, there was back in the day, the cops in different generations were former war fighters, and so they had, visceral experience. They weren't doing simulators. They were coming out of war zones. And then, as fewer and fewer wars, which is a good thing, happen, now you've got people who, they feel like their calling is law enforcement, and we need them, and we need those people there, but we need to do a better job training them. We got to, de-escalation is the way to go, because that's the moral, ethical, legal procedure. But you need to, you step into that reactionary gap, you step out of your car. And this goes for even citizens listening to this who are trying to reconcile just self-defense laws. You see somebody, if that person's been that asocial, they're willing to injure or kill you to facilitate their escape. It's nothing personal. You came home early when they were friggin', burglarizing your house, and they're going, I'm not going back to jail. And you just saw me. Like, it wasn't personal. And so these things escalate. You need to be ready like that to move. And it's not going to happen if you don't have some sort of training and some of the stuff, we do a 1-day course that's taught like almost like a emergency first aid, excuse me. And people laugh, they go, you're just doing it for the money. It's a 1-day course. And I go, well, you can't learn martial arts in a day. I'm not teaching you martial arts in a day. And you can't learn how to box in a day. I'm not teaching you to box in a day. But I could. How long would it take you to teach somebody how to use a shotgun, Jared?
Yeah, not long.
Right. I mean, like literally in 5 minutes, if they weren't fucking an idiot, you could go, look, here's how you load it and here's how you point it. And then, you could say, this would be a good place to stand behind this door, behind this pillar. And they're not going to be able to make entry on the SWAT team, but you could teach somebody in an hour or two how to protect their home with a shotgun. And I'm just
train. That's the key to this. Are they going to, at the end of that 1 day, are they going to be proficient at it? No, but they know now what to train and the proper way to do it when they train. And that's my thing with a lot of these short classes. I'm just teaching you how to train. I'm not, hopefully you're a little better, but I'm teaching you how to be a lot better if you just continue.
But you're also I think some of the biggest hurdles sometimes is just starting. And so getting somebody to show that there are possibilities, that there are angles and opportunities. The biggest thing that we've had, and we've had a number of people in the last, I've been doing these weekend courses for literally like 2.5 decades. Yeah. And so I've had actual feedback from people who's used this stuff, and it's broken down into an intelligent what we call the 3Ds: detect and avoid, defuse and de-escalate, and a push comes to shove, defend. But the movement we're teaching is really stun and run, and just like violent, a violent quarter extremity movement, like into the person's throat, jaw, eyes, and it's done in a way that catches the person completely off guard and surprised. And of course, the scenario dictates everything. But the message here for everybody is that if you think that living in a bubble, or you think that ignoring it, I like to tell people, violence doesn't care what style you practice. It's just going to happen, but if you don't accept that there are bad people out there and bad shit could happen, you will be so far behind the curve that you're playing catch up. So you got to just accept that it happens. And this isn't about being paranoid and living in your house and locking your doors. It's just your situational awareness changes when you just accept and understand and learn a little bit more about violence.
Right.
So,
I mean, and like with your home burglary scenario and stuff, we always tell people, we have rules and things like that. criminals have rules. And if they break rules, things have changed. Like residential burglars break into houses during the day because they don't expect them. They don't want to meet any. They want to steal your stuff and leave. So if someone's breaking into your house at night when people are normally there, he broke the rules. There's something different there. You need to not, that's probably not a home burglary. That's something different.
Right.
Like a lot of home burglars where we work and just being around where they'll even open up a back door. So if they get startled, they're running out the back door. They don't want a confrontation. They don't want anything. If someone stays in your home after you announce that you're there, they broke the rules. They broke the rules. Like
right.
That is a different situation. That is no longer a home burglary. Someone is there to hurt you.
Right.
And you need to be able to make that differentiate. So like, that's businesses. If you're at a business and someone's breaking in during the day, there's something different because that's just business burglaries happen at night. Residents happen during the day. If they break the rules, it is like a robbery at the ATM, right? A robber comes up, you give them your money, they leave. As soon as they say, get in my trunk or whatever, guess what? They broke the rules.
Yep.
There's something more there. That's a fight for your life. Either you can fight there or you can fight when you're off in wherever in your trunk.
Right.
That's a fight for your life.
Don't Jared's saying don't ever go willingly to a secondary crime scene. Hey, listen, we tell people, we try to break it down. Like a lot of the people that we teach aren't, I mean, of course we teach professionals, but in these one-day courses, they're just, citizens, good Samaritans that just want a quick education. We tell people bad guys only want one of three things: property, body, or life. And each one of them brings with it a different level of danger: property, body, or life. So that resonates exactly with what you're saying. Let's wind this up because you got to go catch bad guys. Any tips for the listeners? Any tips for our first responders listening?
For first responders, get out there and do training. Spend your own money on training, and just make yourself harder to kill every day. This is my personal thing, but like with all the violence that's happening with law enforcement now, it's been like that over years. It's not something new. If you need social media or the news media to tell you that this job is dangerous, then you're way behind. And when will this stop? It's never gonna stop. There's always gonna be evil in this world, and there's always gonna be good people to fight that evil. So it's never gonna stop. So make yourself harder to kill every day.
I love it, dude. We're gonna wrap on that. If people want to train with you, what's the best way to reach you?
All social media outlets, Reston Group Training, or just Jared Reston. Website's restongrouptraining.com. Check it out and just email us. All our contact information's on there, and we'll get back to you.
Dude, it was so good to catch up. Sorry I missed you at SHOT this year, but we will see you on the road.
All right, sounds good, brother.
Jared Reston, everybody.